My neighbour tried to eat a rock once, said it was for training. That's when I knew humans were built different. The speaker, Private Jex, leaned closer to his squad mate, clicking his mandibles thoughtfully as they crouched behind the shattered hull of what used to be an elite Threxian scout vessel. Around them, the battlefield crackled with distant rail fire and the shrieks of species that once considered themselves dominant in the galactic hierarchy. Now they ran, scattered like prey. The humans were advancing again. "They do it for fun," Jex whispered. "Pain, hunger, cold, it's like a ritual." Lieutenant Vaughn, older and more skeptical, shook his head. "You exaggerate. They're just hairless bipeds with a loud culture and odd customs." There, not a thunderous explosion interrupted him. Through the dust emerged a figure in tattered combat gear, strewn with mud and blood, his face neutral, even relaxed, as if he'd just taken a walk through a park rather than single-handedly dismantling a battalion of armoured mechis. "Hi," the man said casually, lifting a shoulder-mounted cannon the size of a small vehicle. "You two look lost." Jex dropped his weapon. Vaughn followed suit, slowly raising his clawed hands. The man frowned at them, then sighed and waved toward the horizon. "Go on," he said. "Base is that way. Tell your commanders we're not mad, just disappointed." He turned and jogged back toward the firefight, humming some ancient earth tune as if war was a gentle hobby. Jex didn't move. He stared until the human disappeared into the smoke and chaos. Only then did he speak. "We've made a mistake." The mistake, it turned out, had started decades earlier. When humans first joined the Galactic Concord under the pretense of being newcomers, their planetary file had been dismissed by analysts. Earth was designated as a Class 3 development world, resource-rich, geopolitically unstable, full of primitive broadcast signals, and utterly disorganized. They sent a delegation anyway. The aliens had expected a stuttering pack of diplomats with awkward questions. Instead, they met a man named Commander Reed, who arrived late, bruised, missing a shoe, and sipping something called black coffee. "Sorry," he said, "had to punch a bear. It wandered into the base." The Concord assumed it was a metaphor. It wasn't. From there, things escalated quickly. Humans integrated into the galactic economy with suspicious ease. Their engineers didn't just adapt. They improved alien designs. Their soldiers asked for outdated weapons to make the fight more fun. Their scientists figured out faster-than-light travel jokes before they even finished the manual. Every attempt to corner, exploit, or intimidate Earth backfired hilariously. One Craraean envoy threatened to obliterate their moon unless Earth surrendered its atmosphere processing technology. Humans responded by launching a rock at the Krathian capital ship using a slingshot satellite system and some spare engine cores. The rock, propelled at relativistic speeds, tore through 3 vessels and knocked out the rest with the shockwave. When asked what the operation was called, Earth replied, "Operation Fastball." The Krathians did not return. For a time, the other species simply avoided Earth. Were odd. They were chaotic, but they were also scattered and outnumbered. No central fleet, no planet-wide governance, just city-states pretending to be nations, arguing constantly, and somehow inventing new weapons in the process. It wasn't until the Union War that the real threat was realized. The Threx Coalition had launched a unification campaign, starting with the border systems. Earth, situated inconveniently between 2 valuable sectors, was targeted as a soft entry point. They landed on a Wednesday. By Thursday, the invasion fleet was reduced to smoke and salvage. Commanders across the coalition were baffled. How could a single planet push back an armada? So they sent scouts. The scouts sent back footage. No analysis, just video. A single human squad in the trenches, throwing each other energy blades, cheering between kills, betting rations on headshots. Another footage showed a man crawling through a half-flooded tunnel to sneak behind enemy lines, with a sandwich in one hand and a grin on his face. Then came the worst part, the prisoners. Captured humans, when interrogated, didn't plead. They didn't negotiate. They told stories. One grinned and said, "My uncle used to chase mountain lions off our porch with a broom." Another described surviving a camping trip where all the gear was forgotten and calling it the best weekend ever. They didn't fear death. They seemed bored by it. Even their psychological profiles confused experts. One researcher from the Valari Institute collapsed after trying to decipher the concept of Florida man. More worrying still, humans adapted faster than anyone predicted. Their neuroplasticity, previously dismissed as messy and inefficient, meant they learned languages, strategies, and alien technologies in weeks, sometimes days. One private from Earth translated a Threxian manual mid-battle, rewired an alien tank, and drove it straight into enemy headquarters. He later admitted he just wanted to see what this button does. Now the front lines were dissolving. Human squads moved independently, without a command structure, improvising battle plans on the fly. The coalition forces, trained for order and precision, couldn't keep up. They were losing not just the war, but the very idea of how to fight it. Back in the war room of the Tsar Dominion, Supreme Commander Rowe slithered in silence as the reports piled up. His advisors offered numbers, projections, graphs. None explained the anomaly. "They have no central strategy," hissed his chief analyst. "No cohesion, no long-term battle doctrine." "And yet," Rowe replied, his voice dry, "they are winning." Across the screen, a human in a mud-covered uniform smiled at a drone camera. "You guys need better jokes," he said. "Also, your tanks explode too easily." Then he winked and hurled a grenade straight into the lens. Rowe crushed the data pad in his claws. The war wasn't just being lost, it was being mocked. The Alliance, once confident in its superiority, now found itself on the back foot. The human phenomenon, as it came to be known, was something no one had predicted. The Dominion had long ruled the galaxy with an iron grip, relying on centuries of military supremacy. But now, in a span of mere months, human ingenuity, unpredictability, and sheer audacity were turning the tide of war. The Threx coalition, still reeling from the destruction of their armada, scrambled to find answers. They sent their best strategists, their most brilliant minds to study humanity, to understand the root of this anomaly. What they found after months of analysis was disturbing. Humans were relentless, not just in battle, but in everything they did. They didn't fight to win. They fought because they could. The concept of survival was not their highest priority. It was about proving they could overcome anything, even the most absurd of challenges. In the depths of the Valari War Institute, a research team painstakingly worked to decode the human psyche. They interviewed prisoners, analysed data from countless battles, and reviewed intercepted communications. One report stood out. Private Daniels, a human soldier, was captured during a raid on a Threxian supply convoy. When asked why they had attacked the convoy, he simply shrugged and said, "I was bored." When asked why they hadn't followed standard protocols or received orders, he responded with a wide grin. "You know how hard it is to get a decent cup of coffee in this galaxy?" The researchers were baffled. The humans didn't play by any of the rules. They were the first species to ever actively sabotage their own military structure in the name of what they called having a good time. They didn't mind playing dirty, making things personal, and the more they studied, the more they realized humans were unpredictable, and that was their greatest weapon. It was clear now, Earth wasn't just another war-hungry species. It was a species that fought for the thrill of it, for the chaos, the challenge. This wasn't just a battle for survival. It was an ideological war, a fight for something far deeper. And that understanding set the galaxy on edge. Back on Earth, President Ward stood before the United Earth Assembly, his hands clasped behind his back, his gaze steady. The news of the alien invasion had spread like wildfire, but Earth had not faltered. Instead, it had fought back with a ferocity no one could have anticipated. "We didn't start this," Ward said, his voice calm yet firm, "but we sure as hell will finish it." A collective cheer erupted from the assembly hall. Across the world, soldiers prepared. But it wasn't just the military that responded. The civilian sector, engineers, farmers, scientists, everyone rallied. A new kind of war machine was being assembled, not one of endless resources and overwhelming force, but one of innovation, improvisation, and sheer will. The first human counterattack was as audacious as it was unexpected. Instead of sending the usual fleet of warships, Earth's military launched a single, massive vessel, dubbed the Victory, manned by volunteers from all walks of life. It was a ship of every imaginable design, parts salvaged from broken satellites, hastily engineered weapons, and experimental propulsion systems. The Victory was the epitome of human ingenuity and defiance. And it was ready to make a statement. Commander Roderick Hunter, one of the few surviving veterans of the initial attacks, stood on the bridge of the Victory, his eyes locked on the display. The mission ahead was simple. Strike at the heart of the Threxian command ship and send a message. Not just a military one, but a psychological one. The humans were here, and they had come to win by any means necessary. As the ship's engines roared to life, Hunter couldn't help but feel a twinge of pride. They were a ragtag bunch, but they had something none of the other species had, something dangerous. They had something called spirit. The Victory tore through the stars, weaving through enemy fire with a combination of reckless abandon and surgical precision. The Threxian fleet, expecting a conventional assault, was caught completely off guard. The ship's design was an abomination in the eyes of every military strategist in the galaxy. It should have been destroyed within minutes, but it wasn't. It took hours to reach the command ship, during which time the humans engaged in a game of cat and mouse. They fired off every weapon at their disposal, none of which were standard. The ship launched drones made of scavenged parts, each one timed to explode in unpredictable bursts, creating havoc in the Threxian ranks. The Victory itself fired unrefined energy weapons, causing massive damage to enemy ships with every shot. "We're running low on ammo," Lieutenant Jackson reported from the weapon station, his voice tight with adrenaline. "But we've got plenty of surprise left." Hunter grinned, his eyes scanning the forward display as the Threxian command ship loomed large. "Surprise. That's what they get for thinking they could understand us." The Victory closed in on the Threxian command ship, and that's when it happened. The humans deployed their final weapon, a communication jamming device. But this wasn't just any jamming device. It wasn't designed to block signals or disable systems. It was designed to scramble the minds of those who heard it, a loud, disorienting, and utterly maddening sound. One that cut through the galactic silence like a knife. It was a song, a human song. As the first chords of Bohemian Rhapsody blared through the Threxian communication channels, the chaos inside their command ship reached a new height. Threxian officers, their minds already frazzled from the constant barrage of attacks, lost all coherence. It was no longer about tactics or strategies. It was about survival. Each alien trying to silence the maddening music that had invaded their minds. "Target locked," Lieutenant Jackson said, barely able to contain his laughter. "Firing now." The Victory unleashed a single powerful blast straight into the heart of the Threxian command ship. The explosion was massive, a blinding flash that momentarily turned space itself to light. When the light faded, only debris remained. Hunter stood at the helm, breathing hard, but smiling. "We've got their attention," he muttered. "Let's see how long they last." The destruction of the Threxian command ship sent shockwaves through the galaxy. In the moments that followed, the Threx coalition scrambled to mount a defense, but it was already too late. The human war machine had shifted into full gear, and no one, not even the mighty Dominion, could have predicted what would come next. Back on Earth, President Ward watched as the report streamed in. He had known humanity's potential. But this was something different. They had become more than soldiers. They were an unstoppable force of nature. And they weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting to remind the galaxy who they were. The victory over the Threxian flagship was just the beginning. Earth launched its final decisive push, a full-scale counter-offensive that would reshape the galactic balance of power forever. The victory, now a symbol of humanity's unrelenting spirit, led the charge, with humans from all corners of Earth following suit, swarming into every corner of the galaxy, striking at the heart of their enemy's territory. The alien fleets, once united and powerful, were now a disjointed mess. They had underestimated the humans, and that had been their downfall. They expected warriors with crude weapons, diplomats with empty promises, and societies that would fold under the weight of intergalactic pressure. What they got instead were individuals with an unyielding will to win, regardless of the cost. On the front lines, Commander Roderick Hunter and his team led their forces toward the final battle, one that would take them directly into the heart of the Dominion's capital. It was a gamble, a risk unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. But humanity wasn't afraid of risk. It was in their blood. "We've reached the heart of their territory," Hunter said, his voice steady but filled with excitement. "Now we make them understand. This war ends today." The final assault on the Dominion's capital began as a chaotic symphony. The human forces were everywhere, weaving through enemy lines, using their unmatched resourcefulness to dismantle the advanced defences that had once seemed invincible. The Dominion soldiers, trained for precision and control, now faced an enemy that didn't fight with order, but with unpredictable creativity. There were no tactics, no battle plans, only human ingenuity. Every corner of the Dominion's capital became a battlefield. From the streets to the sky, humans fought with everything they had. They didn't just use weapons, they used everything at their disposal. One group of soldiers took down an entire air defense system by launching homemade drones made from scrap metal and old electronics, powered by simple but effective rocket engines. Another team infiltrated the enemy's command center by sneaking in through the ventilation shafts with nothing but improvised climbing gear and a well-timed distraction. The Dominion didn't know how to respond. They had underestimated the power of unpredictability. The chaos of the human assault had rendered their precision tactics useless. They were fighting a battle they couldn't control against an enemy that didn't follow the rules. It was in the final hours of the battle that the human forces struck the most telling blow. Commander Hunter and his squad infiltrated the Dominion's Central Command facility, the nerve center of their empire. It was a fortress, a place designed to withstand the best of the galaxy's military power, but it wasn't designed to withstand a group of humans who had come together with one goal: to win. Inside the control room, Hunter faced the Dominion's Supreme Commander, a towering figure whose alien features were etched with the weight of years of conquest. The commander stared down at Hunter, his eyes filled with contempt. "You think you've won?" The commander sneered, his voice dripping with arrogance. "You're just a planet of animals. How could you possibly defeat us?" Hunter didn't flinch. He stepped forward, his eyes never leaving the commander's. "We're more than that," he said, his voice calm. "We're more than just animals. We're humanity, and we don't stop until we've won." With that, the human squad launched their final attack. They stormed the control room, overwhelming the Dominion's guards and disabling the central systems. The battle was over. The Dominion had been defeated. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson. Underestimating humanity was the greatest mistake any species could make. As the dust settled, Commander Hunter looked out at the crumbling capital. It wasn't just a victory. It was a declaration. Humanity was no longer a minor player in the galaxy. They had proven themselves to be the apex predators, not through sheer force, but through resilience, ingenuity, and an unyielding will to survive. Back on Earth, the people watched as the galaxy shifted before their eyes. They had taken on the mightiest powers the universe had ever known, and won. The message was clear.